Alongside many other viewers, the ending of Anora absolutely gutted me, and I had to ask myself, why? I really wanted to understand why has a character who I didn't expect to connect with leave such an effect on me? To answer this question, I had to go back to Sean Baker's purpose of the film and how he masterfully breaks down the stigma associated with sex work by empathetically humanizing the person behind the profession.
Annie's story, Annie feels like hopefully, a fully fleshed out, three-dimensional character that you guys can root for and have empathy for, and I think that is, if there's a goal behind these films, I think it's to help chip away at the very unfair stigma that's applied to sex work through these fleshed out characters. Hopefully, we are achieving that.
Often called the oldest profession, sex work has dated back hundreds of years, being deemed as a mark of disgrace, a social discrediting, or spoiled identity. What has been consistent with the unfair perception of sex work throughout the years is the demonization, alienation, and exploitative nature of such services. During interviews with Mikey Madison, Sean Baker encouraged her to read The Modern Whore by Andrea Warren, which offers a unique perspective from an ex-Toronto sex worker. In an interview with the author, she states, "The stereotype against sex workers is that we're all just victims of our own fate, and we couldn't possibly be the heroes of our own journeys. If people can relate to me not only as a sex worker, but as a human being, a person who has multiple interests and who has worked multiple jobs, who has many hopes, dreams, hobbies, and powers, that means we're one step closer to seeing other sex workers as fully fleshed human beings." This is what Sean Baker successfully achieves in Anora, as well as his other films such as The Florida Project. Throughout the film, we spend over 2 hours with Anora, where Sean Baker breaks down the barriers through a compassionate, informative, and empathetic lens on a stigmatized group in society. By breaking down the shame associated with the profession, Sean creates a bridge for empathy between the audience and Anora, making her feel like a real person with her own hopes, dreams, fears, and ambition. Through this empathy, Sean establishes a common thread between the viewer and character, a common thread that we all have irrespective of our profession, gender, or social class: the need for connection. For the rest of the analysis, I'll deep dive into how Sean Baker creates a modern retelling of a classic fairy tale, Cinderella. I'll be splitting my thoughts into 3 integral parts. The first, establishing the fever dream fairy tale. Now, to quote Baker's wife and producer Samantha Kwan, who doesn't want the fairy tale? We all want to believe that dreams can come true. From the very opening sequence of the film, it opens with tinsel red lights akin to Anora's hair and the song The Greatest Day by Take That. The tracking shot of sex workers providing lap dances immediately brings the audience into Anora's world, shattering the initial barrier that one may feel towards the taboo nature of sex work. Baker utilizes point-of-view shots as if we're watching Anora from afar, to give a documentarian-like feel to understand what her day-to-day grind looked like. In addition to this, I noticed that he utilized close-up shots just on Anora while she was lap dancing or on a strip pole, whilst masterfully using blocking in such a way where the men she was giving these lap dances to were faceless, giving the sense that they were all forgettable whilst normalizing her day-to-day work. What Baker does so well in this first act is establishing what a normal day is like for Anora, as it becomes a critical foundation that amplifies the impactfulness of Yvonne's charm and his Prince Charming allure. The first act of the film essentially continues to build towards the crescendo of their marriage in Vegas, where Yvonne evidently grows a fondness for Anora, but does he truly love her? The short answer to some would be no. However, through a deeper inspection of both characters, I do believe that both Anora and Yvonne show love in ways that they only know how, both transactionally but through different means. for Ivan through his wealth and status, and for Anora through her body. By feeling as if this is the pinnacle of what love and marriage is, whilst being swept away in the impossibility of how her circumstances have changed, this leads me to the second component of my analysis: a fairy tale turned nightmare. Prior to the home invasion scene, what I thought was poignant during this segment was when Anora asks Ivan what his parents' reaction was to their marriage. You see the hopefulness in her eyes, but you also sense the uneasy evasiveness of Ivan's response, particularly his lack of pride for what is meant to be a happy union. This highlights again why the first act in establishing her day-to-day grind was critical when contrasting what she has by Ivan's side and her denial in letting this go. To shift focus on the supporting characters here, not only do I commend Baker for humanizing Anora, but he also does an incredible job flooring my expectations by humanizing the thugs in the film. Toros, Ivan's godfather, his brother Garnik, and their Russian henchman Igor. Similarly to the frenzy and chaotic cadence of dialogue in Uncut Gems, we see a similar pattern being played out here to comedic effect. During this segment, I felt the sting that Anora felt whenever she was reduced to a derogatory term like hooker or whore by Toros. After spending time with Anora and feeling her excitement to be lifted from her circumstances into this fairy tale-like reality, it makes the viewer feel the cheapness and reductiveness of those terms placed on Anora and sex workers as a whole. At this juncture of the film, you're also rooting for Anora to have her fairy tale-like ending. Honestly, I didn't know what to expect at this juncture of the movie, but seeing Ivan abandon Anora at the home like a selfish little prick still surprised me, and I found her reaction quite heartbreaking, because you could see her denial in believing that Ivan was leaving to get some help, but the reality is that he completely abandoned her at the first sign of needing to take accountability for his decisions in marrying her. Now this leads me to the third part of my thoughts and analysis: the shattered fantasy and the unexpected heart of the story. There are two core segments that I want to touch on in the third act of the film. The first is the segment in the lead up to the annulment. Now, Mark Eidelstein, the actor playing Ivan, does an incredible job with capturing the micro movements of an immature boy. There's a scene where the squad is waiting for Ivan's parents to land in America from their private jet. And there's a mid-shot of Ivan highly intoxicated with his eyes slightly open in the foreground. And when you see Anora walking up to check in on him in the background, he closes his eyes when she draws near, pretending to be asleep. His avoidance to face her and the consequences of his decisions demonstrated his lack of respect or accountability towards people. Like money, people are disposable to Ivan. Not only is this demonstrated through his relationship with Toros, but is exacerbated with Anora. Marriage has been a historical vehicle to unionize families, solidify security, and retain one's social standing. And through this satirical retelling of a Cinderella story, Baker brings to the forefront the dehumanization and classist attitudes projected towards sex workers through the family's apprehension, deeming this union as a tragedy. In the final scene, we see Igor give Anora's ring back after it was taken away by Toros. You see Anora start to take off her clothes as it's the only form of appreciation that she knows to give. He tries to hold her and kiss her, and she responds with apprehension until she completely breaks down in tears whilst he embraces her. The scene cuts to black as you continue to hear the window wipers breaking the silence in Igor's car. I found the dynamic between Anora and Igor was the unexpected heart of the film. He was the only person who tried to get underneath her armor, seeing her beyond her profession. What continued as small acts of Igor showing genuine respect and thoughtfulness to Anora, from apologizing for the initial confrontation and what unfolded, during the home invasion scene, to giving her a scarf during the cold wintry night, not giving her pain medication unnecessarily, and trying to just get to know her personally, all culminated into the weight of kindness that you feel when he gives her ring back. You feel this sense of bleakness from the ending, but simultaneously, you also feel a sense of cathartic hope for the genuine connection that Anora allows with Igor. To go back to my initial question, why did this film affect me so viscerally? Baker masterfully creates an authentic human story that humanizes sex workers through the character of Anora. Irrespective of our backgrounds, professions, gender, and social class, we're all people with hopes, ambitions, and fears of our own. We're all just people seeking connection. Thank you to Sean Baker and the team for creating this incredible film. I would strongly recommend checking it out. If you've also happened to make it to the end of my video, thank you so much for taking the time to tune in.